Good morning, seventh grade. I realize you might be watching this video at some other time of the day that is not in the morning, but since seventh grade class always happened in the morning, I will probably start most of my videos in that way. We are going to be starting a new unit together, and this will serve as the introduction to that unit. I had told you earlier this year that we were going to read a novel about the Civil War, and I want to still be able to make that happen. I am hopeful that you'll be able to get copies of the book. I talked to Mr. Plotz, and it may be a possibility, so perhaps you have your own book in the folder this time. If not, you're going to read it on the screen with me. I currently do not have my book at home, and I was able to borrow it from an online library, which is pretty neat because it still looks just like the book, and I'm turning pages just like I would in a book. I thought about sharing the audio that is available on that, but it sounds like a robot, so you're going to have to deal with me reading it to you, which I prefer a little bit anyways, because I'm going to stop and discuss things along the way. I'm going to try to share as much information with you about the Civil War as we can. We will have other articles that we read relating to the Civil War to help us get a better understanding of this book, because it is a bit of a challenge. So I do encourage you to watch these videos, or at least listen to the videos as you're reading the book yourself. In the future, when we start chapter 1, please have your book handy and perhaps just read along with me as I begin to read from the book. So let's take a preview. We're going to take a look at the book I borrowed. There it is. So it's similar to your book. If you have one there, you can see that the picture that is on the front is the same as yours. And we see on the front the title, Across 5 Aprils by Irene Hunt. It was a Newbery Award. This one wasn't, but her book, she's a Newbery Award winner. So she is a very well-known author. We see at the bottom the unforgettable, deeply moving story of the 5 fateful years of the Civil War. So it kind of already took away, should have waited to read that, some of the questions that I normally ask in the classroom. So currently, hopefully you're watching this in April. We usually start reading the book in April, but we don't usually cross 5 Aprils while we're reading it. So think about that. What does across 5 Aprils mean? Yeah, to go over 5 years. So if we think about that, how many years did the Civil War last? And it told us at the bottom there that the Civil War was 5 years. So that's where the title comes from. The other thing that I would like to share with you before we begin, so this is actually a historical fiction book, so it's not all fact. I'm going to go to the very back where we have an author's note. We're going to read this together. So the author, Irene Hunt, had some inspiration for this book, and it's going to share in the author's note. So please read along with me. If you have your book at home, I believe it's in the back of your book as well. We see. The accounts of the battles and the historical background of Across 5 Aprils are drawn from research in many books, periodicals, and other sources of information. As to the story of the Crichtons, so that's the family that we're going to be following, there is hardly a page in this book on which a situation has not been suggested by family letters and records, and by the stories told by my grandfather. He was a boy of 9 at the beginning of the Civil War, and by the time his grandchildren knew him, most of his days were spent in reliving the war years, in which the great struggle sharply touched him and every member of his family. He was a good storyteller, and he gave his listeners a wealth of detail that enabled us to share with him the anxiety and sorrow of the times, as well as the moments of happiness in a closely knit family. There are many questions that I should like to have asked my grandfather as I wrote Across 5 Aprils. For example, I was unable to name the exact date of the story's opening because I could not determine how long it would have taken for news of the firing on Fort Sumter to reach the farm in southern Illinois. Again, I was not sure just how bread was baked in the ashes of the fireplace. I only knew that his grandfather remembered it, that bread was the sweetest he ever tasted. Then there is the little song that I have called 7 Stars, for lack of any known title. I have heard my grandfather sing it many times, and I sing it myself, yet the words never had any real meaning for me. I have never seen the words written, so I have spelled them as they sounded. I must admit, I do not know what the Rambo is. I wish I knew what the words really meant. I think, however, that even grandfather would have been unable to tell me. It would indeed be good to have been able to ask the many questions that came to mind during the days of research and writing. It would be better still to be able to thank my grandfather for the memories he shared with us. This book is dedicated to his great-grandchildren, but the story is his. So now we know that that book not only is based on facts, we will learn true things that happened during the Civil War, but also that it is based on stories that she learned from her grandfather. So to some degree, it feels very much like a true story, but it is still considered fiction because there are so many pieces of it that she had to kind of make up as she went along. The family, for the most part, though, is based on her real family. So I do want to point out, as we open up, our published date. So this was written or first copyrighted in 1964. So this is a pretty old book. Trying to think, so it's probably about 100 years after the Civil War, and we're even further after that point. So keep that in mind when we begin to read the story tomorrow. So I think that's all I have for you today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Please make sure that you check Schoology for any other directions or that I may have given for you to do today. And I'm going to end our meeting. Have a good day.